having the worst month of my life, but the best reading ever. Okay, hi pals. I'm gonna try to pretend like I have energy today because I'm utterly exhausted. I haven't been here in like 2 months. If you're new here and you're like, who the fuck is this stupid bitch? Or you're like tuning back in, this is the first time I'm seeing you in almost 2 months. Hi, I'm having a horrible time, but it's getting better. If you didn't see the community post that I really hope posted, that I posted just in an absolute rush, like a day after this happened, my washer flooded my house. And it descended floors. It was ceiling ruining, wall ruining. We had to have half the carpet pad in our home replaced. Luckily, none of the carpet got replaced. So yeah, I'm back in this room. Maybe there will be a video or a picture or something of when this happened. Maybe not. I tried to film a video while everything was in chaos, kind of explaining what happened, and I kept crying during it because it was really, really, really bad. And we couldn't be in our home for like 2 weeks while there were 8 tiny Viking fans and 2 giant dehumidifiers making our house so loud that our dogs couldn't exist without being in pain, like just in their ears. So it's been a really fun time, but we are almost completely back to normal. You know, fingers and toes crossed that when we turn the washer back on again, after we have to diagnose a different problem with it, that everything goes back to normal. But I'm back. And as such, I'm exhausted. It has been probably like the worst like month and a half since my mom died, like 3.5 years ago. It's been really rough. I'm just gonna take a moment and I'm just gonna say, I'm sorry, my eye itches. I'm just gonna take a moment and say thank you so much for your patience. I know this is extremely small YouTube channel and there's only a few of you that turn in at all or consistently, but I really appreciate just, people's patience while we just got our shit together. It's been a lot. Oh yeah, fun fact, I also had shingles during all of this, which, you know, for a 35-year-old person was not very fun. Not fun at any point in time, but whenever I spoke to a doctor through a telehealth appointment, it was very refreshing for them to be like, I know exactly what's happening and you're not weird for getting it this young. So that was really fun to be dealing with, while also dealing with the washer and then just a bunch of personal shit that happened on top of it that I'm not gonna get into because we don't know each other like that. It's been hell, and hopefully the house is on the other side of it. The shingles are gone. Thank God. That was one of the most painful things I've ever endured. And yeah, I'm gonna be rambly today, and this is gonna be a chaos wrap up of the last 2 months because I have not had the brain space to collate all the data into how I normally would do this. So, you know, let's fucking talk about some books. Can we? I would just love that. So yeah, my personal life has been an absolute fucking shambles, but the reading I've been doing has just been like fucking top tier. It's been incredible. I think one of the last things I posted on this channel was the worst reading month of my life. And then I have just read some of my favorite things of the year, favorite things of the last several years, some of the best books that I've read this year, and just in general, my reading has been going super, super well. So let's talk about it. I have my phone out here because I didn't collect any of this data during the last 2 months of hell. So I am just going to quickly run through everything I read from the last thing I read to October to the first thing that I read in September. And I'm doing this off of Storygraph here. So we're just gonna quickly go through it, okay? I gave 4 stars to Come Closer by Sarah Graham. I gave 3.75 stars to Sister Song by Lucy Holland. I gave 4 stars to Youth Juice by E.K. Sathue. I gave 5 stars to The Heart by David Sodergren. 4.5 stars to Unmask Alice, LSD, Satanic Panic, and the Imposter Behind the World's Most Notorious Diaries by Rick Emerson. 2.5 stars to House of Bone and Brain by Gabino Iglesias. 3.5 stars to The Mothers by Britt Bennett. 2.25 stars to Magical Girl Apocalypse Volume 1 by Kentaro Sato. 5 stars to Erotic Stories for Punjabi Widows by Balik Jaswal. 3.5 stars to Tokyo Ghoul Volume 1 by Sui Ishida. 2.5 stars to The Children of Jocasta by Natalie Haynes. 3.75 stars to noted TERF Margaret Atwood. 5 stars to Not That Bad, Dispatches from Rape Culture, collated and I believe edited by Roxane Gay. No rating to Content Warning Everything by Akwaeke Emezi. 2.25 stars to Nana by Brandon Massey. 4.25 stars to The Many Dars of Feng Moi by Jamie Ford. 4 stars to Redwall the Graphic Novel by Brian Jacques. 5 stars to Human Acts by Han Kang. 5 stars to Leadfeather by Stephen Grant Jones. 5 stars to Pet by Akwaeke Emezi. 5 stars to Glory by No Violet Bulawayo. 3.5 stars to Life on Mars by Tracy K. Smith. 4.5 stars to The Eyes Are the Best Part by Monica Kim. 4 stars to Our Moon by Rebecca Boyle. 3.5 stars to Signal to Noise by Sylvia Marino Garcia. 4.5 stars to Pink Slime by Fernanda Trias. 4 stars to Shriek and Afterward by Jeff Vandermeer. 5 stars to Strong Female Character by Fern Brady. 3.5 stars to The Eyes of the Dragon by Stephen King. 3.25 stars to Screams from the Dark, edited by Ellen Datlow. This is an anthology, by the way. 4 stars to Cat's Eye by Noted TERF Margaret Atwood. 5 fucking stars to Ripe by Sarah Rose Etter. 4.25 stars to Earth Divers, Volume 1 by Stephen Graham Jones. No rating to Books and Islands in Ojibwe Country by Louise Erdich. 3.75 stars to The Berry Pickers by Amanda Peters. And finally, no rating to The Hearing Trumpet by Leonard Carrington. That's a lot of books. That's not usually the order I would put them in, but your girl is tired and exhausted and just going through a BoJack Horseman binge, because that always means everything in my life is going well. So I just kind of want to, not randomly, but I just want to talk about like some of the books I read, and I don't want to do the superlatives, but I really just kind of want to, there's just a few of these books that I really want to talk about. And so the first thing I want to say is I believe there were 3 books in here that I gave no rating to. Books and Islands in Ojibwe Country, Content Warning Everything, and The Hearing Trumpet. And all of them got no rating for very different reasons. I think someone in my comments one time asked me why I choose to give no rating versus a rating and the thought process behind that. So I'm just going to talk about that really quickly. Sometimes when I give no rating to something, it can be for a couple different reasons. Number one, I think that my feelings on a book can like transcend a rating system. Rating system can be very limiting as far as like talking about enjoyment versus impact versus ability to connect with an audience. And sometimes I just feel a little bit too much about a book, which sounds wild, but it's accurate to how I feel. I can feel too much about a book and feel like there's no way for me to There's no way for me to condense my feelings into a 1 through 5 system accurately while also remaining true to how I feel. So sometimes even if I love a book, it's one of my favorites of the year, I'm not going to give it 5 stars because I feel more complicated and more complex about it than that. So that's a big reason a lot of times, and that's very true for Content Warning Everything, which is a poetry collection by Akwaeke Emezi. It was really incredible and I enjoyed it, and I thought it was very, very personal to the author, and I had a good time reading it, but I just didn't feel like, first of all, I don't always like to go into poetry collections and like give each individual poem like a rating. Sometimes I'll keep track of like what my favorites were, but this one very much was such a good collection. Especially, it was very raw, it was very real a lot of the times, and I just didn't feel like a rating fit there. Other times for books like The Hearing Trumpet, I enjoyed that book and I had a good time with it, but I also didn't feel like I was the right audience for it. And that complicates my feelings in a way that lead me to not want to give it a rating, because I don't want to like drag down the rating, or I don't want to feel like I'm contributing like in a way of like underinflating a book. A lot of people love this book. I think it's very, very impactful for, I believe, people in Spain. I believe that is originally where it was published. And I just, as a dumb American, there were things in it that didn't connect to me personally. And I believe Leonard Carrington was also, I don't know the style of painting, but I believe she was an artist of some kind, and so a lot of people who love her work, I believe it was surrealism, but I could be wrong on that, really love this novel, novella, whatever it's technically called. They love this story, and I'm not familiar enough with her work to pull all the things out of it that someone who is would do. So I just didn't give that one a rating. And so yeah, that's it. Okay, so the first book that you just saw it, I'm just gonna hold it up here. The first book I want to talk a little bit about is The Eyes of the Dragon by Stephen King. Number one, this is I believe this is young adult, technically. This is like a fantasy novel. If you're big into The Dark Tower, this is connected to The Dark Tower. And honestly, this was fine. It was really fine. The thing I loved about this book is the audiobook. I have never in my life listened to an audiobook narrated by Bronson Pinchot, which I know him from The Langoliers as Mr. Toomey, Mr. tearing apart the fucking papers and everything. That's where I know him from. And I think by the end of this year, I will have listened to 5 or 6 audiobooks narrated by him. And that is wild to me. And this is one of the best audiobooks I've ever listened to. And it's because that man did work in the studio. It was incredibly entertaining and fun, and I think you could just feel the enjoyment coming from the audiobook by the narrator. And I can't think of this book without thinking of the audiobook where the villain is running up a tower, cackling and screaming maniacally, and this man put his whole throat and chest into it, and it was so shocking and funny, and I just loved that. And that was the only thing I really wanted to talk about this. If you have been interested in this book, I highly recommend the audiobook. It's very entertaining. The next book I want to quickly talk about is Glory by No Violet Bulawayo. This is probably going to be in my top 10 books of the year. Spoiler alert, there's at least 3 or 4 in the last 2 months that I've read that are going to be up there. This is a satirical novel, little bit historical fiction. This is a satirical look at and discussion of the political coup that happened in Zimbabwe, I believe in the 80s? No. Excuse the fuck out of me, in 2017. I am a dumbass American. Hi, I grew up in Texas with public schools. I'm stupid. I'm not educated enough in world history. But this is a satirical look at that. This is absolutely just 100% fascinating. Oh, it's also worth noting the reason why there's like a horse and is that a dog? I think that's a dog and a pig on the cover, is that all the characters are animals. It's not like Animal Farm where they're like farm animals with sentience. No, they are like anthropomorphic animals, and they're just animal people going around doing their things and living in the country of Jadada with a da and another da. And it is just, that phrase I just said is in here so many times, and the use of repetition is just so incredible in here. That phrase, Jadada with a da and another da, has been stuck in my head since I read this, and I think it's very intentional, and it's a deeply funny and deeply moving story. And it also is just, it's not far off, I believe, from what actually happened in Zimbabwe, and it's really incredible. I have such a hard time talking about this book with like any coherence without like someone knowing all the things that happen in here, because it's just so incredible and it's so good, and I had such a lovely time, and it's one of my favorites of the year. Speaking of favorite books of the year, I think something is finally unseated. You Made a Fool of Death with Your Beauty, and that has to go to Ripe. This is a literary fiction following Cassie, a millennial who is on the cusp of 30, who is working at a tech startup, whose work-life balance is atrocious, who has a terrible home life, who has a bunch of trauma that is completely unresolved because her parents are unwilling to talk about it, and she is followed by a black hole and has been since she was born. This is such an intensely sad and indifferent book. It is so, I think it really encapsulates, I'm not going to talk about this in a way that like someone else hasn't talked about more concisely, but I feel like it just encapsulates like millennial existential ennui so well. It is incredibly sad and depressing, and I listened to this audiobook This might have been one of the last audiobooks I listened to before my house flooded. I listened to it all in one evening and I absolutely fucking sobbed at the ending. I had such a marvelous time with this in like the best way. I love books that make me feel. I love books that make me like just connect to a character and really just sit with them through a portion of their lives. It was absolutely incredible. It was wonderful. And this is probably my favorite book of the year so far. And I'm not sure that anything else is going to top it. I'm going to quickly lump 3 books together because I want to talk about the experience of reading them back to back to back. And it's also worth knowing that this is the book that I had finished previously. So I had 4 5-star favorites just right back to back during this terrible time in my life. And it was such a funny juxtaposition of the difficulties of life with just the incredible books I was reading. So the other 3 were Pet by Kweke Emezi, Lead Feather by Stephen Graham Jones, and Human Acts by Han Kang, all of which were 5-star favorites of the year. Pet is a young adult fantasy. It is following a young girl named Jam, who is a trans girl, and she is living in a world where monsters have been defeated and banished, but maybe not really. And Pet comes into her life and is a monster and is showing her how the world really is. I identified with this way too much with Pet. I was full tilt, like, nah, fuck these people. Like, they need to be the fuck out of here. And I absolutely loved it. And then the next book I finished was Lead Feather by Stephen Graham Jones, which is a historical fiction following a young man who is struggling with his past. He's indigenous. It's the past and the present are sort of commingling in his world and in his mind. And it is just a beautiful look at trauma throughout generations. And then the next thing I read was another thing about trauma and heartbreak and fucking just people and their brutality, and that's Human Acts by Han Kang. And this is taking a look at the political upheaval in South Korea in the 1970s and the ways in which people just fucking treated other people, and like the torture and the attacks, and just, it was absolutely incredible. And all 3 of these books back to back were just such a wonderful reading experience because they all had this sort of central theme that I think rang true throughout all of them, that was very similar, talking about pain and trauma and the difficulties of living with that and growing up with it, and like figuring out that things are different for you than they are for some other people. But they were all so unique and individual and handled different topics with such grace and just absolute complexity and nuance, and I absolutely loved all of them, and I had such a wonderful time reading them. Okay, I promised that I'm gonna end this video on a high note, but really quickly, I'm gonna talk about the bullshit that I read in the last 2 months. Quickly, Nana by Brandon Massey. This is a horror. This is following, I don't even fucking remember their names, okay? But these 2 people who are recently dealing with the death, these 2 married people who are recently dealing with the death of the wife's adopted grandmother, and then her mother, who has not been in her life her entire life, suddenly comes back into the picture, and then she's taking over everything. She like seems to be stealing the youth out of her, and like the way that these 2 people interact with that. I hated this book. This wasn't like a 1-star, but it was just like it was just tippy tapping over that line. I don't want to talk about like the naivety in the characters or the way that the husband acts. I just don't think that's for me, so I'm not going to talk about that portion of it because I don't think I am the person to understand what was going on there from the author's perspective, and so I am not going to talk about that, and I tried to leave that out of my feelings when I rated it. The thing I will talk about though is I'm really fucking sick and tired of men writing about the difficulties of women aging. I'm really sick of it. I am sick of old women who are jealous of young women and their youth being fucking vilified. especially by men. And it's always this like covetous, I'm gonna be a succubus and I'm stealing your youth from you. It's just the same fucking tropes. And I'm fucking sick of it. And I feel so intensely about it. Okay, I moved the camera because the light kept getting dark. Not the light kept getting dark, words. The lighting's weird, it's fucking snowing. Everything is weird. Do you know how many fucking short stories across these two collections are like young ingenue is coming in, but the old disgusting woman is going to come and attack her because she's jealous of her youth. It's so many. And I swear to God, there's so many like stories and novels, especially in horror, that are like, oh my God, women are aging and they're fucking monsters because they're jealous. I'm fucking 35. Do you know, like, I know you can't see it here because this camera's not that good and like I'm not gonna zoom in, but I have like tons of gray hair up right in here. And it's not enough to like really show up, especially like with my dark hair, but I have tons of gray hair. I got my first gray hair at 25 and I fucking cheered. And I'm like, yes, I have fucking wrinkles and like I'm old and I just live in my life and I don't fucking care about it. And I just don't think that men are the people to be telling the story of women's aging and the way it impacts them and the way it makes you feel fucking mentally. And to sit here and constantly just vilify older women, I hate it. And it's not done well here, and it's just fucking trope after trope after trope after trope. It's so annoying. It's so terrible. I hate it. This book made me mad. And I'm not even talking about all the bad things in it. This specifically, I was just like, I'm done with this. This is bullshit. I'm so sick of it. Can we please stop having men telling women how they're supposed to feel when they get older and try it? It's just, I'm gonna hit the same things over and over again. I ranted about this shit for like 2 hours with my spouse after I read it because it was just such bullshit and I hate it. Speaking of some other really fun and terrible bullshit, and I don't really mean fun actually, Magical Girl Apocalypse by Kentaro Sato. This is a horror manga that I picked up just like because I was just in a mood. I was looking for some manga. I was just trying to read something quickly, and I grabbed this because the title and the cover, I was like, oh, this is either just gonna be like Titty City, or this is gonna be an actual dissection of like magical girl tropes and fan service tropes that you will see in anime or manga. And it was just Titty City. This was disappointing, but it was disappointing because of my decisions. I didn't know anything about it, and I went into it hoping for something that I had no right to hope for, and that's not what it was. So I hated this. Then the last book that I'm gonna talk about that I had a bad time with was The Children of Jocasta by Natalie Haynes. I literally just didn't care about this. This is a historical fantasy fiction, whatever, in the same, you can tell I'm just so done. This is historical fantasy / fiction in the same vein that Natalie Haynes has written a lot of things. This is talking about Jocasta and Oedipus, and a retelling of that story. And honestly, I just didn't care. I didn't care from moment one to moment done. There were literally like twists and turns and shocking things happening, and I could literally like I would literally be reading it and then just roll my eyes because I didn't care. And I would just have the thought cross my mind of like, wow, if I was into this book, that would have been a moment, but instead I just don't care. So I don't know if it was the book or it was me. I'm gonna bet it was probably me. I got a little too historical fictioned out in the last couple months, and I just had a miserable time with it. And there's nothing particularly bad. I can't even rant about it like fucking Nana. I just didn't have a good time with it. I just didn't. And the high note I promised you I would end on: erotic stories for Punjabi widows. This was incredible. This is another book I listened to mostly over the course of one day. I think I listened to this over like a 14-hour period. This is a satirical fiction. This is following Nikki, a modern daughter of Indian immigrants in the UK, and she is a little lost in life. She's struggling, and then she sees an ad for teaching older Punjabi widows to write. And it is written in a way as like, oh, you'll be collecting short stories from them and teaching them the creative writing process, when in fact it is actually just teaching them to read and write in English. And it goes from there. This is deeply funny. It was really like steamy in a lot of places because it's not fucking around when it says erotic stories here. And it was really sweet and just heartrending in places. I really felt for Nikki here. And I think it was just an incredible book. This is another one of my favorites of the year. I just read so many good books. I read so many good books the last 2 months. And I'm so grateful. What a perfect time to read good stuff when everything else around me is falling apart. And I really loved this. I thought it was really sweet and really endearing. That's really how I felt about this. Like, all the characters just had my heart from the beginning, and I just absolutely loved reading their story. Okay, that's a chaotic wrap up. I'm so sorry to my spouse for having to edit this. I hope it's not terrible, and I hope this video isn't just a million years long. But hopefully we're back. Fingers crossed. Please do algorithm things if you feel like it. Like, comment, subscribe. Fingers crossed I'll see you next week. And maybe I'll be a little less tired than I am right now the next time I film a video. But I hope you're having a wonderful day, or at least an okay one, because sometimes that's all we can hope for. Okay. Bye, pals.